So for this deck tech, I got for you what is just Golgari Graveyard with the commander here, Akawalli. For a while I was running a commander called Wilson with the background Criminal Past, but that ended up being really easy to kill. You can see what those cards are. But right now, got Akawalli here. He's a real good guy. Starts out as a 3/3, but what you're actually going to see is since he costs 3 mana, most of the time he's going to be starting out at least 5/5, which is great because he avoids bolts. And at the end of that, he'll get up to a 7/7, which means he can't be blocked by more than one creature, and also has trample. And most things are not going to be able to stop what that is. So it's pretty insane there. Now, what I'm going to start by going with at the graveyard is grabbing all my stuff that puts stuff in the graveyard, which we'll start with the 3 main dredgers of the format, which all say dredge 3 or more. We got Stinkweed Imp of dredge 5. Their bodies don't matter too much, except for the fact that Shambling Shell here has the nice ability of, if you play it, it can sack itself off to put it right back into the graveyard. And Greater Moss Dog is a little support animal. There's one more dredger that we'll get to later in the sideboard, which is Golgari Brownscale. And that's not in the main deck because it only says dredge 2, and is a lot more awkward to get usable. Now what I'll go to is what is the A team of self-mill spells, which all generally say get a land back, because this deck is going to be running a very small amount of lands, and we can't really have that. And as you can see, all of these in the A team, except for this, are creatures, because a lot of these can also grab creatures, and we want to keep making sure that we're filling our hand as we're going. And all of these at least mill 3 or more, and that is very, very key to making sure that we are having a sufficient amount of cards in our graveyard for, as I was showing earlier, Akawalli, which specifically references the number 4 and 8. So we want to make sure that we're getting a lot in there. Next off, we have the kind of more rough package, but they're working out. And that is spells in the field of Cash Grab, Grizzly Salvage, and Seed of Hope, and close enough to be in the B team because he costs 1 mana, Roboboat Maverick. So what these are all doing is, once again, milling that key number of 4, 5, and then here 2, because these are the 1-drops. We just kind of need to get something going, which is very good. Roboboat Maverick here also has a little nice effect that he can exile himself in the graveyard, and that could actually be key to getting that extra point in when we need it. So that's for that. And we're going on to what is pretty much the C team, because none of them actually get a card into our hand or like sit on the field, and that is real awkward when you're trying to actually value anything. So we got Balustrade Spy, who in other formats is much more impactful because you can have a much smaller number of lands in your deck. Here, when we're singleton, not really possible to go down to like 6 lands. Right now I'm on 16, and I can't really get that number any lower. Like, if I do, I can basically not even cast a 3-drop consistently, and that's not going to be possible with my commander being a 3-drop. Then we got Colossal Badger, who is a mill 4, but key enough, he's a permanent. So what we can do is also get him off of stuff like Grizzly Salvage or White Cash Grab or Malevolent Rumble, which we cannot if it was a true instant. So it actually ends up being a little better than you might expect. The only problem there is that that ability that puts stuff in the graveyard does not actually put anything in my hand. It just puts +1/+1 counters on something, which I've had actually be a surprisingly aggressive threat. If you turn one Roboboat Maverick into this, you could have a 5/5 just going at their face on turn 2. So a nice little hidden upside to this weird creature here. Then we got a suite of 2-drop guys that just say mill a couple cards. We got Desperate Bloodseeker here, who's a little better against aggro decks because it has lifelink, and has been actually kind of relevant in testing. And hypothetically, you could target your opponent with this. Don't think that's ever happening, but it's possible. Then we got Mire Triton, who has Death Touch, and basically the same creature, just with 1 less power, with also Death Touch and Deathcat Marionette. Notably, though, Mire Triton does gain you 2 life, and that could once again also be very good against aggro decks. But the good thing about these is they are taking something down with them if they get on the field, or at worst just getting sacked off to rebirth another creature when we get to our graveyard package later. Cool. Then we got the 3-mana ones, which is effectively 2 mana in Greyslod. It's another one of those adventure creatures. It mills 4, which is nice, and can also be a little bit of a threat with Menace and Death Touch, threatening to take out at least 2 creatures if it ever attacks. So that's not too bad. Then we got every 3-mana creature that says get a land back when you mill. So we got Eccentric Farmer, Patient Naturalist, and Pothole Mole, which are very much the cards that are just here because we strictly do not have enough of these 2-mana get stuff back cards. So once we get more of those, these cards are going to be the fastest things out of here, besides maybe these 2-mana ones that don't even get a land back, because as I was saying, we need to be able to get lands. So any creature that can get us a land is good. And that brings me to are full-on land cards. So we got Troll of Khazad-dûm and Generous Int, which can just get lands straight up. They also go to the graveyard, which can be nice because we exploit the graveyard. We can get them back potentially. We can use the fact that they're a creature in our graveyard to potentially kill our opponent. And then we got Sagu Wildling here, which is an omen, which so when you use it to get a land, you won't actually be getting it into your graveyard yet. But we can then mill it over, and it's a creature for purposes of everything we've shown before that need it. And Street Wraith here, which has the specific synergy of being able to trigger Dredge on my opponent's turn. So getting that potential extra Dredge trigger is actually really nice. Not to mention that it also has Swamp Walk, so if you reanimate it, it's actually potentially able to kill people. Like, most people don't see that mode, and it's kind of fun. Then we got every card here that can interact with the graveyard, which the easy first package to go with is Dregscape Zombie, Acorn Harvest, and the card that exploits them, Dread Return. So Dread Return here shows that it is a reanimation spell which can return a creature from the graveyard to the battlefield for 4 mana. Now, hopefully we'll never have to pay that, but it is affordable if we need it. The key thing there is the flashback that says sacrifice 3 creatures. And hey, look what we have here. Unearth, 1 creature. So 1 mana, we got that out. Flashback, 2 mana, pay 3 life. We got 2 creatures out. Now we have a total of 3. All from our graveyard. If we milled all 3 of these, we can immediately get something back for a total of 3 mana and no cards used from hand. It is very versatile combo that gets this big boy right here, Lotleth Giant, which says it deals damage to your opponent equal to the amount of creature cards in your graveyard, which there should be about over 30 cards in this, so as long as we were halfway through a deck, we should be able to kill them, especially because we're going to be trying to beat down with guys like Akawalli, because, you know, any lesser number you need is better to kill your opponent. Next, we got a couple cards that are good at just exploiting the fact that we are graveyard-based, and that's going to be Tortured Existence, and a couple of good payoffs here, which are Rhizome Lurcher, Haunting Misery, and Moodmark Painter. Haunting Misery here is effectively just going to be the next copy of Lotleth Giant with the sad downside of, if we F it up, we just exiled our whole graveyard and we are going to lose. But if you need to take a shot at your opponent for 10, this gives you a chance to take a shot at your opponent for 10 if you draw it. So that's good. Rhizome Lurcher is it's kind of sad B plan, but what he comes down with is the number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the amount of creatures in your graveyard. So you could just say, hey, it's turn 4, just throw it down to 10/10. Deal with it. Which brings me to a card that I actually set over here called Champion of Doosan, which is a new card from Tarkir Dragonstorm, which has Renew. It's the only Renew card I put in here because it specifically has the keyword Trample, which means that from the graveyard I could say, oh hey, Rhizome Lurcher, you're a 10/10 that they're just going to chump block. No, now you're an 11/11. You're actually, and you have Trample, so you could probably kill them. So it's a real nice synergy. Then what we got here, Moonmark Painter. It has the very key thing of Menace, and +X+O for each creature in your graveyard, which means that when you're doing stuff like Akawalli here, who can't be blocked by more than 1 creature, you have now made Akawalli unblockable and probably like a 20 power creature, which will just immediately kill your opponent. Now we got the more value-based ones in Tortured Existence and Evolution Witness, which are just going to be able to turn stuff back into your hand from the graveyard and just keep you in the game, playing with stuff if you accidentally milled over something you didn't need. Especially because Tortured Existence is probably one of the most overpowered cards you could possibly get if you just drop it on turn 1. Because say I have a Dredge card, what the key here is going to be, oh hey, I discard my Dredger. I get back, let's see, Moonmark Painter to give something a bunch of damage. Okay, now I have the Dredger on my draw step. Cool, put this right back in my hand, and I can pay 1 mana on the turn to discard it again. So this is now an infinite value loop of every turn I get whatever creature I want from my graveyard, and put more cards in my graveyard. It is probably the most broken card I can think of in the deck if you're just trying to do value things. And so that's that done. We have also here a card I skipped over a little bit, which is Exhume. It's just going to reanimate something, and hopefully by turn 2 or 3, when you're only put a couple cards in your graveyard, your opponent hasn't put anything big in there yet. Obviously, there is the sad downside of a lot of people are playing cards like Troll of Khazad-dûm, which means that... here it is. Troll of Khazad-dûm, which means that if they cycle this, you're not putting a big threat in their place. But that's why in games where you see somebody cycle Troll of Khazad-dûm, this will just sit in my hand until I can shoot them down with the Lotleth Giant. And so that's how that normally goes. The last thing I have here in my graveyard package is just a couple of value big guys, which all have the specific text of they cost less if there's stuff in my graveyard. So I have this 5/5 Death Toucher, this 5/4 who can cycle itself if I really am in a pinch. Not too much going on there. And then Gurmag Angler, who I'm gonna just try and delve a little bit and get going. Most of the time I'm gonna be targeting my lands and my instants and sorceries that I have a couple of specifically, so I don't reduce my creature count whenever I do this. Because I also don't want to target my lands unless I have to, because Akawalli counts permanents and not creatures. Then, as a one little show off here, I only actually have one removal spell in the deck, because this is an engine. It doesn't need to do much to my opponent. I need to do my thing and hope they don't mess with me in the main deck. Accursed Marauder here is partially because he can just put himself in the graveyard and be a creature and remove something, and it's also findable off of the many things like Cash Grab, Grisly Salvage, Winding Way if I choose creature as a removal spell. I wouldn't be playing this if it were an instant or sorcery. It needs to be findable to be even kind of relevant. And that's kind of it for the main deck, except for the lands, which I'll get to you. It's not too complicated. We got a couple searchables. So these are both the non-basic lands that are searchable off of the tree and the troll. So pretty simple there. We're trying not to play too many tap lands, so these are actually the only tap lands in the deck, because I have a lot of 2-drops and a couple of 1-drops, and I want to be making sure that whenever I'm putting land into play, I'm using it to forward my curve. So we're trying to avoid these as much as possible. Then I got a couple spicy cards right here, which are the 2 Surveil lands in the format, which are Hidden Grotto, Conduit Pylons. So both these just say tap, add a colorless, and then 1 tap, add 1 mana of any color. And they're honestly a little bit rough for that if you get them in a 1 or 2 land hand, but the Surveil can be nice enough by itself because you're forwarding your game plan with it. And obviously if you hit a treasure, as was pointed out by the invisible hand of Hunter there, you will be able to then dredge on possibly turn 2, and that's really good. Lastly, I just got some basic lands for you. Got 3, 4, 5 swamps, and then I got 3, 6, 7 forests. And the reason why there's more forests than swamps is because as we look at all these cards that put stuff in the graveyard, green, 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 couple of black ones, then green, 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 especially when we see the list of all the best ones, they're all green. So we want to make sure on that turn 2 we have a green mana most of the time. Because if we only have black mana, it can be a lot more rough for us. And that's it for the main deck, so we'll get onto the sideboard here. I'm just going to take everything out of the way real quick. And we'll start with an easy package here of the anti-graveyard for our opponent. So this also has a little bit of a splash into the artifact package in Heritage Reclamation. So we have Fairy Macabre here, which is specifically discard it, remove up to 2 cards in graveyards from the game. You're only going to be using this because it doesn't state anything about messing with your own graveyard. It's why we can't use cards like Relic of Progenitus, because we don't want to accidentally exile our own graveyard. So we have a lot of stuff that's specifically targeting a couple cards, because we're going to be looking for problems in our opponent's cards and searching those out most of the time. So got that there. It's also an instant Fairy Macabre, so you can do that whenever. Easy to get through, can't be countered as well. It is surprisingly versatile. Then we got Rotten Reunion, which is in the deck because if we mill it over, it has this flashback cost, and it can only exile 1 card, but say your opponent has a deck like ours where they need a Lotless Giant in their graveyard or anything like that very specifically, you just flash it back, exile the 1 card that's a problem, and now you have a 2/2 on the field, which you could possibly use to sack to your own Dread Return, and that'll help out a lot. Then we got Tormod's Crypt, just easy, 0 mana, only gets rid of the graveyard, perfect staple card. Then we have Heritage Reclamation here, which I brought up, which has the versatility of also being in our anti-artifact and anti-enchantment package, which I'll get to now, which is we have Deglamour, which can get rid of artifacts and enchantments and notably shuffles them into the opponent's deck, so they're not going to their graveyard if there were an artifact or enchantment that they could potentially bring back or do any abuse with from the graveyard. Just gets rid of them easy peasy, doesn't trigger any death, or it doesn't trigger anything on death, and doesn't trigger anything that could possibly like mess you up. Cool. Then we got Tranquility here. And it's the cheapest thing that destroys all enchantments on the field. So if you're playing against somebody like Boggles, anything that like specifically tries to set up a heavy enchantment strategy, it's mainly Boggles. But you get rid of all of them at once in one fell swoop, and that should hopefully blow them out enough that you get the couple of turns. Because once again, we're not a deck that's trying to control our opponent. These sideboard cards are to hold them back just enough while we do our thing. They're not there to completely stop them forever. Next, we got what I would say is our anti-burn package. We have Golgari Brownscale, which when you put it back in your hand from your graveyard with Dredge, it'll gain 2 life. And so that can be very nice, especially if you're doing like stuff like Tortured Existence. You can gain 2 life every single turn, which can be very difficult for a burn deck to deal with. We got Unexpected Things, which with the amount of big creatures you saw earlier, if we put a lifelink counter on any of them, hopefully that should get us out of any trouble that a burn deck will deal. Especially because most of those creatures don't die to bolts, and they need to be sideboarding in hard removal to deal with them. Then we got Weather the Storm, which on average will hopefully gain you about 9 life, because they play a card, you play a card, Weather the Storm, or they play 2 cards in their turn, Weather the Storm. This will gain you enough that you should hopefully get 2 or 3 more turns in most games that will give you the time to win the game. And then we got probably what will gain the most life 90% of the time, which is Gnaw to the Bone, which can be cast from your graveyard, which is the important part. It flashes back, and it gains 2 life for each creature card in your graveyard, which there should be about 38 to 40 creatures in this deck. So maybe a little less than that, but a very high amount of creatures, and if you mill over 5 of them, that's 10 life. That's going to be very hard for any burn deck to recover from. Next, we got what I would say is the removal suite, which is Lignify, Snuff Out, and Extract a Confession. These have very specific like caveats to them that are why they can kill stuff, which is Lignify here turns something into a tree, which means that if you're just like holding out against somebody and they have a really impactful commander, and you're not going to be attacking into it much because they also have like probably more board state, etc., you're going to just turn that thing into a tree, sit back, and then dome them for 20. So it just means that against a commander that's too tough, you'll just let it chill and not go back to the command zone to hurt you again. Then we got Snuff Out here, which is free if you're playing against any deck that's not black creatures, and is going to completely like mean that you're not taking any time off of your game plan to remove something. And that's honestly the important thing, is we don't want to be taking too much time off, so Snuff Out is the premium removal of this sideboard. And then we got Extract a Confession here, which looks a little bit weird, but it says collect evidence 6, and why that's important is each opponent sacrifices a creature, and then if the evidence was collected, instead they'll sack the creature with the greatest power. So say you're running against an opponent that has like Tolarian Terrors and then Murmuring Mystic Birds. You can make sure that they're sacking the Tolarian Terror and not just a random bird token. You can get to the heart of like what's actually hurting you. And that's also nice because it synergizes with our graveyard strategy. I can just say remove 1 Troll of Khazad-dûm from my graveyard if I really need to, rather than like having to completely F up my graveyard to deal with it. And last but not least, we have the Hand Hate package, which is for control decks, which is Mesmeric Fiend, which I can get back off of stuff like Tortured Existence and the Evolution Witness, and Duress, which is 1 mana, and you can't beat 1 mana for good effects. So I have these to hopefully hate out stuff of my opponent's graveyard hate that they will be bringing in against me, or just good removal at the current time that they're doing it. Because I don't need to hit creatures, I only need to hit non-creatures that are going to mess with my game plan. And that's pretty much it for the sideboard. So remember, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this video, and we'll keep you posted on future videos.